How's everyone doing today? Good? Good. It's a lovely day. Thank you all for being here with us. My name is Lauren Pacheco, and I'm a creative director with Chicago Humanities. You know, I just want to say I have such affection for sign painters, and I say that is because not only growing up not far from the Bridgeport community, it was such a sign painting was such a ubiquitous visual language, right? That was present in grocery stores and remains today. But I have an uncle and a cousin who are also sign painters working in the city of Chicago, and I have such fond memories going to their studio and just making chaos in what is otherwise was always a very sort of pristine and organized environment. But it's such a lovely hand language that I think resonates with me so closely, and I hope with all of you, which is why you're here today. For today's conversation with Heavy Press Pages, this beautiful book here is available for purchase right up front. Very heavy book, so you know you're getting your money's worth. But I'm going to introduce the speakers so I can hand off the program, because you didn't come here to hear me talk. A few words about our speakers. Kelsey and Andrew McClellan operate Heart and Bone Signs, a sign painting business in Chicago. They started their careers as sign painters by discovering lettering books. As lovers and collectors of printed materials, it was important to continue making ephemera that could be found and collected for future letter enthusiasts. Got to get a bit up for the archivists, right? They are committed to sharing stories that too often get lost in time. Our moderator today is Tanner Woodford, is the founder and executive director of the Design Museum of Chicago. In his independent arts practice, he creates large-scale, optimistic, typographic murals that are featured at the Wonder Museum and Soho House, as well as Gary, Indiana, where I live. Tanner was appointed in 2020 to the City of Chicago's Cultural Advisory Council. He's taught, lectured, and led workshops on design issues, social change, and design history in various classrooms and at conferences. Now, please welcome Kelsey, Andrew, and Tanner.
So much. How's everybody feeling today? Awesome. So excited to be here. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday. How are you all feeling today?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Good. Let's just kick it off at the beginning. Tell me how Heart and Bone got started.
So we essentially were painting signs pretty much ignorantly, not knowing what we were doing, just kind of trying to make a little extra money on the side. Then this is like 12, 13 years ago. And we applied to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago as a collaborative. We had an art practice together, and we were accepted. Started the program, and it was not really, it was a difficult adjustment. But one of the things that happened is when we were downtown, we were walking around, noticing all the hand-painted signs and all the gold leaf signs. One had a signature on it. I looked that signature up, and it was a gentleman named Robert Fries, who had been doing gold leaf signs in Chicago for the last 45 years. And I reached out to him, and it was perfect timing. He was ready to pass on some of his knowledge. And so through that, we kind of learned this was a trade. It still was being practiced by people, and we slowly, over the decade plus, have been developing our own business and practice in sign painting.
Incredible. And just to call him out, Robert's here in the audience today as well. So.
It was a little awkward. I stared at him
Just to embarrass him a little bit. I can see a really strong sense of both tradition and original authorship in your work. Can you share how sign painters navigate the balance between the new and the old, especially when you're working with styles tied to historic periods, cultural references, and new commercial signs?
Sure. I think one of the most difficult things is navigating what the sign should be, where it exists, what the storefront looks like, what the business is, and then also the client's expectations and their taste navigating what they're looking for, and then also balancing your ideas and what you would want out of it. So I think, especially in our practice, I can just speak for ourselves, we try to take traditional techniques, traditional letter styles and forms, and try to add a little bit of modernity to them and our own touch, and then really just try to find that perfect balance between the client's expectations, what we want it to be, and what the sign should look like.
Tell me more about your touch. What defines a Heart and Bone sign versus another shop?
I guess, we have a real passion for the history of signs in Chicago. Research and preservation is a big part of our practice. So, when we're thinking about signage, we're thinking about pre-existing signage, historical signage, we're thinking about the building. So I think the way we think and work about signs is very dynamic and inclusive of the space and the community where it's in. And we're willing to do new things and experiment and try and kind of push ourselves, because why not? I mean, it's fun and exciting, and we kind of do look at, recently in a conversation, we came up with this idea that the windows we're working on are a canvas. And so if we look at it through that perspective, we are making art still.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I love about your practice is that you do so much documentation, you do look at history. It feels like for me, you make history come to life. And I'm curious what draws you to documenting signs and stories, not just painting them. Why do you do that?
It's a huge reason is because I think in the past decade of being in this trade, we've realized how easily stories are lost, how quickly signs disappear, and we kind of out of desperation started to document and seek out these stories and do interviews and now write a book, things like that. So just seeing, I think we felt like it was really important to do, because if we aren't doing it, it's gonna be gone.
Absolutely. That's very true. And I'm always really happy that you do it. And it's good to see those things as well. Looking back, do you remember a particular sign from your early career or even your childhood that's stuck with you?
Yeah, I think Kelsey had spoke about, we were originally from Colorado, and when we moved out here for the graduate program at SAIC, our studios were right downtown, of course, and when we were walking around on our breaks, we found the Monadnock building, and that to this day still stands out, and it certainly did then. The building itself is very architecturally, historically significant, and it maintains what we consider the gold standard, meaning that all of the tenants in the building are required to have gold leaf signs. And so every single unit all the way around the building is a gold leaf sign. And I remember us just being entirely floored by this. Because, here we were thinking that we were pretty cool, got into grad school after trying like 4 times, and we're seeing these signs and seeing that they're painted and truly having absolutely no idea how they were made. And there's something very humbling and very exciting at a moment where you think you know a lot, you realize that there's so much more to learn. And so I think that was very formative for us.
Who paints those signs?
Mr. Robert Fries.
Incredible. To this day?
We do them now.
You do them now. Okay, great. Well, that's amazing. So you saw it, were inspired by it, and then how did you end up getting the gig to paint it? How'd you come back and work that out?
Well, Robert had essentially, I guess, the contract or relationship with the building owner that was developed over years. And I have to give him a lot of credit. He's probably the reason why Chicago has gold leaf signs today, because he just kept doing it, even though people would much rather buy vinyl signs or go the cheaper, faster route. He really definitely kept the history alive. And so he we developed a relationship with him. He is our mentor, and so after a lot of time watching us progress, he finally gave us the accounts. So we now do them.
That's incredible. That's such a great story. Let's go to signs in Chicago. I'm really curious, sort of tell me about the book in general and also just where it began.
So the book, that sign on, I guess, your left, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it was uncovered in the summer of 2022 in the Ravenswood neighborhood. Essentially, a building was set for demolition, and in the middle of the night, they took down all the siding because it had asbestos. They didn't want to deal with the city, so they took it down in the middle of the night. Well, these amazing, beautifully preserved signs were revealed. This one, it was Ward's Bread, which is the predecessor to Wonder Bread. Was painted in the 1930s, and then on the other side was a 1920s shell sign. And typically, signs like this are painted on brick. They're typically exposed to the elements, and they'll fade, and you'll get what is called a ghost sign. You still see them all over the city. But these were like in perfect shape. I mean, when we showed up, it was like being transported back into time. We both were just like completely enamored. And so, not knowing anything about preservation or taking down panel signs or anything, we just felt compelled to save them and started bugging people essentially and saying, hey, this is really important, we need to save this. And in all honesty, I mean, the whole community was fascinated. A lot of people were taking photographs and looking at it. It was in the news already, so we happened to work with the development company on a project, and so we knew them. We knew like the top guys. I sent them an email, and they, I think, felt compelled to allow us to do it because of how much press the signs had already been gotten. They didn't want any bad press, so they said, you have 25 days. If you can take it down, you can go ahead and go for it. So we had to crowdfund for the scaffolding, which was really expensive on both sides, but we essentially took it down panel by panel, numbered them all, and then this one ended up in the American Sign Museum, which is in Cincinnati, which is really amazing. We still have the shell sign. But what was fascinating that we found out through the help of Tim Samuelson, which is the Chicago historian emeritus, he did some digging for us. He was really interested in what was going on. That Briggs is Jack Briggs, who started Beverly Sign Co. And Beverly Sign Co. was a very prominent, well-known sign company on the south side of Chicago that operated from the 40s until the late 80s. And that bit of knowledge led us into another mentor of ours collection that he had been holding on to and preserving of hundreds of original sketches from Beverly Sign Co. that were saved from the trash in the 70s. So essentially a young journeyman sign painter was told by his union boss to throw all these sketches out, because normally they wouldn't keep any of this stuff. And he said, can I keep them? And he said, I don't care what you do, get them out of here. So he kept them. They exchanged hands, but from sign painters who wanted to hold on to them. And essentially, one of the designers, Ken Millar, taught one of our mentors, Bob Bohonik, and Bob basically wanted to make a book because his mentor had always wanted to put these into a book. And so the way that we had just accomplished this, and we thought, okay, let's make a book. I mean, it can't be any harder than saving these giant 30-foot signs. And so it took us 2 years, but we finally made the book.
And it was a lot harder.
It was a lot harder.
That's what I was just wondering. I mean, both the book and saving the sign are so ambitious. Did you have a moment that you were like, why are we doing this? We need to stop? Or was it just sort of problem solving? And
I think it happened so quickly, taking the signs down, and with all the support of the community, both in funding for the scaffolding and the general excitement about it. And then also definitely have to give a shout out to Todd Swarmstead, who runs the American Sign Museum. He was very much interested in making sure that this was saved, and it was almost serendipitous. They already had this beautiful main street inside of their museum where they have all these different businesses, all these different signs, and they were extending the main street. They were essentially doubling its footprint. And almost every square inch of this had already been planned out. And he had one wall that was next to what was going to be the sign shop. And it happened to be almost exactly the size of this sign. And it was going to be wood paneling. So it was just totally meant to be.
I love when a plan comes together.
Totally.
Especially when it's the universe's plan. Why a book? It could have been a blog, a website, an Instagram archive. It sort of is an Instagram archive in some ways, but what about the physicality of a book excites you?
We've thought about this a lot, and there's a couple of reasons. One is we, as Lauren had mentioned, we learned sign painting and developed our interest in sign painting through books. So books have always been really important to us. We collect old sign books, and really we kind of understood that the way that we look at a book from 100 years ago is the exact same way that we're looking at a book now. And so there's something important about that connection and how you're consuming the media. Like the technology of it hasn't developed or gone further than how you are intended to view it. So, there are some sign blogs, there's some like chat forums and things like that from 15, 20 years ago, and it's kind of hard to read them, and it's hard to consume what's on there because the technology has developed so much, and so the way that we look at forums or information online is so different. So I think the consistency of having books, seeing books from 100 years ago that were made in Chicago, and wanting to continue that consistency and tradition was really important.
Absolutely. How did Kickstarter shape it?
I think Kickstarter was definitely a means to an end. We started, figuring everything out. As Kelsey had mentioned, we had never made a book. We aren't authors. I guess we are now by definition, but we didn't know really how much it was going to cost. And then when we realized it was going to be north of $50,000 to make this book, we realized we were going to have to find an organized way to have people who are interested be able to help us fund it. And so that's pretty much, without Kickstarter, it wouldn't have been able to happen. But Kickstarter takes a pretty good chunk of the money. It allows a very small percentage of the folks who are impatient to really pester you a lot while you're trying to get the book finished, while everyone else is being very patient. So in the future, probably wouldn't use Kickstarter again if we could avoid it, but very glad that it existed. If it didn't, with this book wouldn't exist.
I know Kickstarter also comes with a sort of an audience. How have you found an audience outside of that?
We have a huge group of a community of sign painters. I think people are always surprised how many sign painters there are worldwide, but there is like a large community. So that community really rallied behind us. And then really Chicago, once people learned about it and we kind of met the right people, Field Notes, for example, has been super awesome and supportive, and we did a collaboration with them for their spring edition, and they've sold books, and they're well known in the design community. So just kind of that, I guess, word of mouth through people. I think a lot of people in Chicago were excited because it's Chicago history, and they're flipping through the book. Jim, for example, at Field Notes, his parents owned a farmer's market, which was one of the signs in the book. So he was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is in here. It's my family's history. And then, if other people find other connections, like, oh, this is where I got my first loan at a bank, or, I bought my car here, or I went on a date here or something. So, people have all these emotional attachments to the signs, which is super cool to see.
Absolutely. I think it reminds you of home and creates a place and
Yeah.
all of that. Last time we got together a few months ago, we sort of bonded over the tattoo world a little bit. I'm just wondering what lessons you took from the documentation of tattoo culture when you were working on signs in Chicago.
The tattoo community does a really good job of documenting all of their stories and all the different flash and all of those things. There's a bunch of different presses, businesses who are making books, and they're really impressive and beautiful books. And we have a handful of them. People in England and Australia and in America are telling these stories, and we realized that there's just a opening for our community that it's kind of adjacent to tattooing. It's like slightly counterculture-ish at this point. And people, just for whatever reason, had not been making any books. They had been. I mentioned Todd at the American Sign Museum. His family is the family that ran Signs of the Times magazine, which is it began in like 1904, I think. And they made some books. And even as recently as the 80s, they were kind of republishing some of the old books. And there's another company called Signcraft Magazine. They were creating some books, some like just different trade adjacent manuals, that kind of thing. But pretty much mid 80s, it just stopped. And so from the 80s up until now, pretty much, no one has been making them. And so much like with this sign, we realize someone's gonna have to do it. I guess it's gonna be us. That's kind of how we felt about the books as well. And so I think that the tattoo books was really just a big inspiration for us.
Absolutely. And it's just, again, the ambition. It's very ambitious to decide to make a book, to document these things, to be inspired by another field and sort of take that on. It's also a living history as well, and I'm curious what kinds of responses you've gotten from either readers or people who saw their own stories in the book.
Yeah, I mean, people have really responded to, the signs that remind them of their own personal history in the city. And I would say, one thing that has been really cool, so there was one instance where, I wish we had connected with this person before the book was out, but that's been one of the awesome things about the book is that people have reached out to us who have connections to Beverly. And there was one person who, his father worked at Beverly, and he had all of these amazing photos or his grandfather, I'm sorry, great family photos of his dad as a kid helping to code out signs, hanging, playing on the Beverly Sign Co trucks, things that we wouldn't have seen through our own research. So that has been super cool to find that, because one of the things that's interesting is that, and we know this, I mean, kind of, but a lot of, taking photos was not as common as it is now. So you expect there to be all of this photo documentation of these signs and the people working there, but it just doesn't exist. And so it's all through personal family connections. And so being able to see those things has been awesome.
Absolutely. Moving back into sort of Chicago and preservation, can you tell us the story of the golden pheasant sign? What happened and why does it matter?
Yeah.
Sure. There's this beautiful sign in just outside of Chicago for a business called the Golden Pheasant. It had been there for, I think, maybe 60 years or something like that. And just kind of, just one of those amazing little moments in the community, this beautiful image that everyone loved. And unfortunately, the business decided it was going to close. And we saw this unbelievably heartbreaking image of a tractor. And I'm not sure what exactly they were trying to do. I think they were trying to gently bring it down or something like that. But in the video, the tractor just comes and just knocks it over. And it just explodes into all these different pieces and was practically destroyed. And so we kind of got a little bit more of the backstory. A guy from Indiana, which happens to a ton of the signs around here, had somehow gotten in contact with the folks, gave them some unspecified amount of money, and then came out here to get the sign and bring it back to his barn or wherever else he was going to put it. And so a lot of these signs end up just getting taken out of Chicago, and they're just never seen again.
How does that feel, like as a sign painter, but also as a Chicagoan, to see these things happen?
I would say it's frustrating because Chicago has like such a rich and vibrant sign history that nobody knows about. And the thing that's really interesting is signs are so important. I mean, everybody goes downtown and when they visit and they take a picture in front of the Chicago theater marquee. Like signs, I think when people visit Chicago, that's what they want to see. And you know, there's no one saying, hey, wait, maybe we should just keep these signs, or let's help the business either maintain the sign, or, you know, maybe there's an option to keep the sign up. It's all just, you know, privately handled once the business closes. And of course, the business owns the sign. It's not necessarily communities, but after a while, all you see are just, you know, strip malls of Starbucks and, you know, signs today that people don't put as much value into. And those markers of our neighborhoods and our environment are just gone. And Chicago could just be any other city at that point. I mean, obviously there's much more, there's the architecture and things like that, but in terms of the typographic landscape, you could just go anywhere. But so I think for us, you know, we're trying to figure out ways to connect with other people in Chicago to figure out when signs are at risk and advocate for them. We've met some people in other cities who do similar things, and they've been pretty successful in preserving signs. So that's super inspiring to see.
Absolutely. And looking back to what would you want people to understand about the legacy of Beverly or artists like Robert Fries?
I think it's really that people, it's like a part of your community. Like when you remember a place, you might remember the signs that you see. And I think also specifically with Beverly, they were hugely influential all around the country. They had become really well known for their design, and people would move to Chicago, come and work there for a handful of years, and then take what they learned and move elsewhere. So a great example of this is LA. There's a gentleman by the name of Heath, and then what was the other guy's name?
Tony Gorsuch.
Tony Gorsuch and Wayne Heath started Heath Sign Company in LA. And it was that classic mid-century, they weren't doing as much painted signs, it was more like dimensional signs and like full facades. And that kind of classic mid-century LA look is completely based on Beverly Sign Co.'s design. And so it really just has this massive reach that people simply don't know about. So I think just being able to tell that story, and as Sherman Dilla says, it's true that everything dope in America does come from Chicago.
Even the Pope.
Even the Pope.
I have a really funny question, which is if Robert Fries were in the room, what would he say about your work today? But he's actually in the room. What do you think about their work?
It's phenomenal. I mean, they've taken it to another level. I'm excited. It's great.
I feel the same way.
One thing that's important to mention about gold leaf is Chicago has a really, which is probably one of your questions.
It is, but please answer it. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that, it relates to Robert, is that there's a really long history, incredible history of gold leaf in the city. And there is a specific style called Chicago style, which Robert taught us and we still practice. And we just did Reckless Records. They opened up a new store in the Loop. on Wabash in Jewelers Row, and so we use Chicago-style gold leaf on their window, which is awesome. So, you know, if you're in Paris, if you're in Mexico, if you're in anywhere in the world, there's if a sign looks like that, it's a Chicago-style sign. So it's really important to us to carry on that legacy and have more people aware of that, because I think we feel it's really important to downtown and the city in general to continue to have examples of that.
That makes a lot of sense. And my question that you answered was, what keeps you coming back to the gold leaf? And is it the Chicago legacy of it, or is there something more to it?
I think I'm sure there's a lot more than just the legacy, but I think the legacy to us is very important. There's this long storied history going back to the late 1800s, and it could potentially be earlier than that, but as far as what's documented, the late 1800s, there's a company called Rawson and Evans. And at the time, they were in the tallest building downtown. It was 13 stories, and it was 13 floors of these tradespeople making these very special, very specific glass gold signs that were being shipped all over the world. And they had even patented a specific technique called glue chipping, where the short of the long of it is essentially the surface of the glass is almost like fractured, and then you put gold leaf behind it. And at the time, this is pre-electricity, they were considered illuminated signs. And so these would have been all over downtown. And so we still make signs like that in our shop. And that's something slightly different than the Chicago style that Kelsey was talking about. And to give a brief description of that, when you see a gold leaf sign that has that kind of dimensional look to it, it looks convexed, that technique is Chicago style. So I think it's the carrying on of those traditions we've just are very passionate about, and we find really important and very fulfilling as well.
How does your process compare to the way things were done by folks like Fries or Rawson and Evans? And how does it differ? How is it similar?
It's pretty similar. I mean, we do the pretty much step by step. I mean, obviously we are able to, I think probably our paint mixture is different than Rawson and Evans. I mean, we use we're pretty much emulating Robert's process when we do a gold leaf sign. But yeah, I mean, I think, I would say it's pretty close, yeah.
Pretty much the same. We have electricity, so
Yeah.
that helps. And
And we drive a car, not
not a horse and buggy.
Can you just walk through the process of making a sign? How do you do it?
Want to handle that one?
I guess it just depends on the sign, but for maybe a gold leaf sign, or maybe do a,
Yeah, I think a gold sign.
okay. So we'll get there, make sure the glass is clean, and first of all, you start with the design. So sketch out the design. We use an old tool called an electropounce. I don't know if anybody here has ever seen one of those. It's essentially an electrified stylus. They make a version of it, but the company that makes the good ones is no longer in business, and they essentially, we have a big easel in our shop that has a piece of steel on it, and we scale up the drawing, and then we'll use this electrified stylus to perforate the pattern, which is called a pounce pattern. And it's the same method that Michelangelo used in the Sistine Chapel. It's essentially you're transferring the image through these tiny holes using a powder. So we'll make the pattern, get everything ready, go to the job site, and then the first step typically, I mean, there's a million ways you can do it, but typically you transfer the image, paint all the outlines, and paint all the effects, so the Chicago style, and then we use a size, which is essentially a glue, to adhere the gold onto the glass. You have to do a couple of layers to make sure that it's totally covered, and then back it up, clean it up, put varnish on it so you can protect it from those pesky window cleaners. And that's essentially the process. It does take, it depends, there's so many variables. I mean, if it's raining, it slows things down. You know, the size of it can determine how fast or slow it goes, the scale of it. So we're fortunate to be able to work as a team, so we work pretty fast and efficiently, I would say.
And can you make one sign a day? Tell me about scale. I guess how many are you creating in a year?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm honestly not really sure about that, but I would definitely think it would be probably around 100 would be my guess. A couple a week typically takes a day in the shop, designing, making the pattern, as Kelsey said, and then the first day putting the outlines up, putting the matte effects for the Chicago style or for different styles, then letting that cure overnight, and then on day 2 coming back, putting all the gold down, and then finishing it up. So typically it's a 2-day process, but of course if it's a bigger project with multiple signs, it can be 3 days, 4 days.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of this knowledge feels like it's embodied, like it's something you've done for so long, you've gotten used to. Is that tacit skill being preserved, or is it at risk of being lost?
You mean like more for us specifically, or general?
More generally, more broadly.
As of right now, I would say probably not. I think that there's like such a broad community, and, you know, I mean, compared to when we started, it's far more accessible, I would say. So I think if anything, my concern would be this generation not being interested in picking up a brush or doing anything that's that slow or not digital. That would be my concern of it being lost, but I'm not sure how, I think we have a few years, a decade or so until we know what that's gonna look like.
There also might be a revolt. This generation might really want to make things. I mean, she's literally coloring on the
I
floor,
know,
right?
which is amazing.
Yeah.
She should just start apprenticing with us.
Yeah, sorry to talk about you. So looking to what's next and sort of the bigger picture, what's the story with the stock car racing book? How did that come about? Tell us about that. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun one. One of the things we learned when we were interviewing people who were still alive who had worked at the Beverly Sign Co. was that for many of them, while of course it was a passion, of course they loved sign painting, it was definitely a job. And so, like anyone else who has a job, you get done with your job and then you go do what you really want to do. And for a lot of these people, it was painting and driving stock cars, which was pretty incredible to us. And Danny Collier is one of the guys that we interview in the book. He was actually a pretty well-known stock car racer in Chicago and well-known painter of stock cars. And once we got him talking about stock cars, there was no bringing him back. That's what we were talking about. And we realized that there's really this incredible history there that we're still working through all of it as we're working on the book. But essentially, before these guys started lettering stock cars in Chicago, the numbers and lettering on stock cars looked kind of bad. It was not very stylish, sometimes comedically so, or sometimes just very plain. And these guys truly, much like Beverly did with the painted exterior signs, they really honed it in, brought it to a new level, made it incredibly exciting. They look fast when you're looking at them. And so much so that the styles that they developed, the techniques that they used are actually what has influenced NASCAR. And what NASCAR looks like now is because of sign painters in Chicago that worked at Beverly Sign Co., which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. So are you working on a book to put this together?
Yes.
Just wanted to break a little news, that's all.
Oh, yeah. We are currently working on it. We're going to make it a little more, I mean, it's a different era, so, of sign painting. I mean, well, I guess it's kind of the same era, but I don't know. It seems like, what's interesting about it is that, and intimidating is how big stock car racing in general is. So we're excited to talk about this odd development in stock car racing that just happened, this little counterculture part of stock car racing that happened when the intersection between these incredible sign painters and just a love for racing happened throughout Chicago, because, and I also think it's pretty fascinating that like the signs that are painted, that would have been painted all over the city, all of the racetracks are pretty much closed. And a lot of that history is just, not all of it is gone. There's a lot of people who have really been passionate about it, and they still talk about it. There's like little gatherings and things like that. But the sign painting part of it is never discussed. So we're excited to put that together into a book and share that part of Chicago history.
Yeah, preserving that, I'm so grateful you're preserving that history. I think it's incredible, sign painting history as well. Personally, what do you want your work, how do you want your work to live on? And what would you hope someone finds 50 years from now of yours?
I hope they find this book. Kind of the way that's what I hope, is that we found our first sign painting book just casually looking around Myopic Books, which is a used bookstore, and we still have it. We still look at it and reference it. So my fantasy is that a young sign painter finds our book in a used bookstore and is inspired and wants to learn more about the trade.
And when that young sign painter finds the book, which will inevitably happen, what do you hope they take away from your journey?
Hopefully that the whole cycle can just repeat again. And that I think it's maybe one important thing that we'd want people to take away from it is that you don't have to take the path that is expected of you. Yeah. Like we knew that we wanted to be able to make a living with a paintbrush in our hands. We didn't know how that was going to happen. When we had that desire, we hadn't found sign painting yet. And by luck, by fortune, by serendipity, we've managed to make that dream into a reality. And so I think if someone would find it and think, hey, maybe I can do this, maybe I can start my own business, maybe I don't have to work for someone else, I can work for myself, I think that would probably be the best thing for them to take from it.
I think too, with like the impending doom of AI, that there's interest or analog methods of sign making and drawing and human creativity are, I mean, it inspires or causes, or, you know, has people inquisitive about that, and if anything, continuing to practice those techniques. And because I think what is the most interesting thing about Beverly is that through human creativity and collaboration and competitiveness, they developed something completely unique and which inspired other forms of design. So, you know, if we're just kind of prompting AI in the future to make signs, which is actually already happening. There's like online forums of people discussing sign techniques, and a lot of companies just have their client give them an AI prompt and then they'll try to reproduce it. But which is fine, and I think it's interesting to see where that goes, but the design part is completely left out of the equation as far as like a professional approach or, yeah. So I think for me and for us, I think making sure that that human creative element is documented and shared and continued.
I love that. I'd love to open it up for questions from the audience, if anybody has any. And did I hear something about a raffle as well?
Yes. We are doing a raffle, so hopefully you all kept your ticket, and one lucky winner will win a copy of the book.
Read the number.
Oh, this is it. Okay. Okay, 547023.
All right.
We got a winner.
Congrats. So excited. Any questions? Sure. She's coming with the mic for you.
Thank you so much. I'm curious for each of you, what is your favorite sign in Chicago? And where would you most like to paint a sign in Chicago?
Ooh, those are really good ones. The first one that comes to mind for me for your first question is the Victor Bar in Irving Park. It's right at Irving Park and Damon, I guess. And it was painted by Robert Fries here. It is absolutely beautiful. It's Chicago style, gold leaf, lots of blue. It's a very cool little bar. And it's just a triumph of design and sign painting in my humble opinion. So that's, that's probably my favorite sign. And then where I would most like to, that's a really tough one.
Maybe the Design Museum?
There we go. That's the Design Museum. Yeah. You know, I feel very fortunate to be able to, with Kelsey, be the person doing the gold leaf signs at the Monadnock building. Anytime that we get to do a gold leaf sign downtown, makes me feel like I'm in the right place and doing what I set out to do in the first place.
The first one's a really hard question because I have so many favorite signs, and it can change. It's like every day there's a new one, but the one that just popped into my head is there's one that just recently was, within the past year, exposed. It's, we drove by it today. What street were we driving down? Damon? No, it was, is it Western? It might be Western. It's a tire shop, but it's a hand-painted sign. You've seen it? And there's not a lot of these signs left around town. It's just like kind of it was a tire shop probably from the 70s. And it's just a really great layout. It's in good shape. It's not in the sun, so it's still preserved. And kind of like in theme of the stock car racing, it says like fast with the fast dashes on it. So it's just like a really cool moment in Chicago history. And then I would say I'd love to do more signs downtown. I'd love to do something on State Street, anything on Jewelers Row. I would love to work with, and we're kind of talking to them, why can't I think of the camera store downtown?
Central Camera.
Central Camera. I'd love to, which is also a favorite sign. I'd love to, we're kind of talking to them. We'd love to help bring it back because they had to replace their facade, their front doors and everything. So, yeah.
Did any of the signs in the book, did you ever find references to them in other media like film or songs or anything? Just curious about that.
It's a great question, and the answer is unfortunately no. There is almost no documentation of these signs, and we went really as far as we could to try to find photographs of them. Spent a lot of time at the Historical Society, the History Museum, going through their archives, really hours and hours and hours of putting on white gloves and looking through all these photographs, and there's almost none. It's like unbelievable. And one of our mentors, Bob Honig, he put it this way, that when he was getting into it in the 60s, he thought it would just be like this forever, that this is the way it was. There were beautiful hand-painted signs all over Chicago. He couldn't have imagined that there would be a day where they wouldn't exist or that things would change. The only one that we found that actually still exists is not terribly far from our shop. It's on Peterson Avenue, not far from Western, and it's Fondue Stube, I think is the name. And they have, like, if you're looking at the building, above and to the left, there is a banner covering where it is. But you can see the little handle of the fondue pot sticking out from behind the banner. So that original sign is still hanging on under there. But as far as like in film or anything, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, and we recently watched Wayne World. We were like really looking. It reminded me, I want to plug, in the book, there is a gentleman named John Stanworth, who owns John's Bicycles and Hardware on the south side, who's still in business. And while we were going, we just had a giant pile of these sketches, and going through them, there was a face on one of them, a portrait. It really stood out. A lot of our research was seeing if any of these businesses were still operating, and sure enough, John is still in business. I recommend going down there. It's
73rd and Halstead.
Yeah, 73rd and Halstead. His son is taking over the business. Amazing guy who has an incredible story, who's been in business since the 60s. And has seen so many changes in his neighborhood, and is just super inspiring. We were able to give him a book, and he cried. It was a super emotional experience. It was just like amazing. But ironically, what we think we found out is that I think John actually didn't end up getting that sign. He didn't want to pay for it. So he has some other signs that are still on his building, which are pretty nice, but you can tell that it was from like somebody like us. It was probably just like an individual who painted the sign, but we thought that was like super funny.
And he said in all of his years of getting signs painted for him, he never had one where all the words were spelled correctly.
Thank you very much for coming today. I was wondering, I have sort of a two-part question. Do you use typical typefaces to get your inspirations from for your designs? Because a lot of these are very mixed fonts. And the other thing is, are you doing anything with any of the design programs in, say, like the American Academy of Art or at some of the arts, Columbia, they still have a program left, you know, that kind of field where you share your knowledge?
As far as typefaces, we have a huge library, and we use all kinds of references. The unique thing about Beverly is that they would use, this is an early one, but in the book you'll see that they were kind of like experts at type and hand lettering type. But essentially they were essentially like an encyclopedia of type. All of these designers, you could say draw whatever type, they would just hand draw it. I mean, they were out of their own head. They were like incredible, and you can see it in the book. They just had amazing skills, and what they were really good at is combining different styles. And there's kind of, you start to see that they use a couple different typefaces over and over, and are combine them pretty well. And what was not related to type, but one of the design elements, which is referenced as the Chicago look, is and that they developed, is that they would use different shapes. So like an oval or a rectangle or a triangle or a circle, and they would overlap these shapes, and they called this panelization. It was just a term that they developed themselves, which would allow emphasis within the layout, so that essentially you had, they had it down to a science. You had like 20 seconds of reading a sign while you drove past. And so they figured out a method to get your eye to look at the important information in the sign. So it's actually pretty complicated, and they were really good at this. But I would say, as far as us working with schools or things like that, you know, I hate to say this, but sign painters are largely ignored by schools and things like that. I think maybe it's that they don't know people are practicing it, or I really don't know, but we've never been approached, or maybe we should approach someone. Because I'm not sure, we didn't go to design school, so we're not really familiar with that. Maybe I should ask you. Maybe I shouldn't just wait for people to come to us, but
I think you're spot on, honestly.
yeah, I think that maybe it's because people are learning to design on computers, and maybe that has something to do with it. I will say we participated in, I don't know if anybody's been to the Hamilton Museum. It's a type museum in Wisconsin, where they made the Hamilton Press was there, yeah. And the letterpress community has been super awesome, and we've made a lot of connections there. But
They're still doing
hot metal, yeah, there's like kind of like sign painting. There's a huge group of people that are doing all different letterpress, and it's pretty fascinating.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thanks. You've talked a lot about the history of the field. I wonder if you can share your hopes for the future of what sign painting could be.
I hope that it continues to exist in any form. I think we're at the precipice of a lot of new ideas, new technologies, whether it be with AI or any other kinds of interesting electric digital technologies. So I hope we don't get to a point where everyone's just wearing glasses that creates all the images for you, and there's actually no signs anywhere, but you can see them when you have your glasses on. That would be bad. But yeah, I just hope that people continue to practice it, that it continues to exist. I think a large part, one of the reasons that we are busy and have been successful is that people want that authenticity back. You know, when we were growing up, most of the signs were made out of vinyl, no design or very little design involved. And I think nowadays people are kind of tired of that. We have a phrase in our community, paint ages and vinyl dies. Because an old vinyl sign just cracks apart and looks terrible, but an old painted sign fades gracefully and looks beautiful.
All right, I just want to end with gratitude. Thank you both for your work and also for the preservation that you're doing. And thank you, Chicago Humanities, for giving us the platform to talk about it. And thank you all for coming out.